Hello and a very warm welcome to everyone in the EWJ podcast, where we sit with educators across the globe to discuss up-to-date approaches to the theme in focus, followed by some actionable teaching strategies, tips, and secrets of the trade. That will be inspiring for the listeners and help them to enhance their teaching and learning experience. Your host today is Maria Zahir, and in this episode, we are talking about online teaching pedagogy with Dr. Robin Kay. Hi, Dr. Robin. Thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. Nice to meet you.
Dr. Robin is currently the Dean and full professor in the Faculty of Education at Ontario Tech University in Oshawa, Canada. He has published over 170 articles, books, chapters, and conference papers in the area of technology in education, and has taught in the field of computer science, mathematics, educational technology, and teacher education for over 30 years. His current project include research on online and blended learning in secondary and higher education, e-learning, video podcasts, scale development, and technology-enhanced learning. Dr. Kay received his MA in Computer Application in Education at the University of Ontario and his PhD in Cognitive Science in Educational Psychology at University of Ontario as well. Well, impressive bio, Dr. Kay. We are honored to have you at our platform today.
I'm happy to be here and share what little wisdom I might have for you.
Thank you, Dr. Kay. So we will start with the question, just a general thought, if you like, your thoughts about online learning versus classroom learning.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big question and certainly on the minds of probably most educators in the globe in the last 2 years. We've been doing it online learning for over a decade at Ontario Tech University, so it's not as foreign to us. And there are different modes, and they have different strengths, and they also have different challenges. So it sort of depends on your learning goals, what you want to achieve, and your circumstances. I'll give you an example for our program, for example, our master's program.
Yeah.
Students, the students are instructors and teachers, and they're very busy. So an online program with this kind of virtual chat works really, really well. We have virtual meetings. However, if you shift that to elementary school, it can be really challenging to engage students. They're there for social purposes, and so you have to work at it and use the tool online to make it work. And of course, just this social interaction and the energy of a face-to-face classroom is very hard to repeat in an online classroom. So I'm going back and forth. They both have benefits and challenges. I would expect that most of your listeners have experienced the challenges because it takes a while to adjust to an online learning environment and figuring out how to work that well.
True.
That's my short answer.
Yeah, true. Great. So do you think it's because we always had EdTech around us? We were using it in face-to-face teaching, pre-COVID era of teaching and learning. So do you think we didn't felt the importance of using it to the full potential of the tools available, LMS or any other learning tools, to enhance the teaching learning in classroom learning?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, and maybe a bit understated. And I can speak from a North American perspective, and I understand that there's a bigger world and a different perspectives around the world, but technology really, and it's surprising given the advantages of many North American sort of privileged environments, that technology wouldn't be used more effectively. But it isn't. And I think sometimes education is pretty slow to resist or pretty slow to uptake new technologies and things. They do, and there's individual champions, but it's slow to be adopted. And I don't think people realized the impact that technology could have. They had to use it. We have now, what I have coined as, we've experienced a paradigm shift.
Mhm.
In no time in history, in education, could you force a group of teachers to move online and use technology, but they've had to do it because they want their students to learn. And
Yeah.
I think that's jump-started us. I don't know, maybe a couple of decades. I don't know if we ever would have got there. And
Yeah.
now I think that many people are looking at technology differently and looking at different kinds of classrooms and what's possible.
True, I couldn't agree more. In fact, our platform came into being because of this emergency teaching.
Yeah,
And although there were so many platforms giving professional development in, using edtech and everything, but our platform literally tailor-made the needs of, distance learning and teaching. And we gave hands-on training to teachers who were like literally, running around like headless chicken, what to do, and how to motivate
yeah.
our learners. Yeah. So
I have I have to say, Maria, that what's happened in our environment, and I'm talking about a higher education environment and to a certain extent secondary school environment,
yes,
is that people have had to rethink how they teach. And I don't just mean through online. What
yeah,
happens, what happens face to face, and again, it's different around the world, but lectures are less and less popular than maybe they were in my time. And it's very hard for today's students to watch lectures, even face to face.
true,
That's certainly in North America. And and if you put a lecture online, that just magnifies how challenging it is, because we've all been to situations online where
hmm,
it starts to go a bit slow, and then we're on our email, maybe we're shopping or something, but
yeah,
we're distracting ourselves because the computer's right there. So it magnifies, online learning actually magnifies poor teaching. And so we've really had to think a lot more differently about how we are actually, the kinds of strategies that we're using to engage students.
true. So engagement was something that was the biggest challenge that teachers had to, or educators across the globe
I
had
bet,
to face, to
I bet.
also to motivate them to be connected and making their lessons effective. So Dr. K, how would you suggest to those educators who are still struggling today after more than 2.5 years of post-pandemic, this paradigm shift of teaching in online lessons?
Well, there are so many suggestions, and I know we have somewhat limited time. What I will do is pass on our it's a free access open education resource on thriving online, a guide for busy educators, because there's a lot of rich ideas there. But I'll highlight a few sort of general ideas that if you're teaching online, the kinds of things that you might want to think about. You talked about engagement. So
Mhm.
I would talk about the 5 to 10 minute rule. So if you are online and you want to present information, you have about 5 to 10 minutes. 10 minutes is pushing it if you want
Yeah,
to present information. And then you're
mhm.
going to have to shift. You're going to have to shift to chat. You're going to have to shift to a poll. You might shift to a breakout room. You might have students review something on the web. It depends on your course, and or do a problem. There's all kinds of things that you can do in terms of breaking things up, but we liked things need to be broken up in 5 to 10 minute chunks. That actually applies to face to face as well.
True. Yeah, I was
Uh,
about to say that. Yes,
yeah,
I
but
agree.
but people forget, right? Or
Yes, yeah,
some people, I don't know,
yeah,
and certainly in higher education, you see it. They'll lecture still with a PowerPoint, and you're going to lose your audience. So even
true.
if you use Kahoot or some sort of response system where you sort of say, "So, did you understand this?"
Yeah.
Uh, so that's a pretty important thing. In online learning too, you want to develop, I think, what I call an e-culture,
Hmm.
an agreed upon set of rules with your class about how things are going to happen. So for example, you might agree that at least 10 people are going to have their cameras on. each
Yeah.
class,
Yeah.
because I don't know if you've taught, it can be very hard to teach a class when no one's putting their cameras on you. You
I
feel
know.
very
You don't even
it
know whether they're online or not, or you're just talking to walls.
right.
Yeah.
Right. And I always say it feels like a comedian up there with no response, not that
Yeah.
you're, anything you say, but
Yeah.
any educator knows in face-to-face or online, I call them the nodders, people that will nod
Yes.
or they'll smile, and
Yeah.
that keeps you going.
Yeah.
Um,
True.
so developing that culture of respect, the kinds of things that you might put in a chat,
Mm.
and a shift in culture where students are taking a little more responsibility for their learning and some leadership roles. And again, I know that depends on the course. So e-culture is pretty important.
True.
Organization is critical before you go online.
Mm.
When you are working in a face-to-face environment and something doesn't work,
Yeah.
you can make an adjustment relatively quickly.
True.
It's more difficult online, and so if you have people going to breakout rooms and you want to bring them back or whatever, things can go awry pretty quickly, and it takes a lot more time. And if individual people have tech problems, it can slow things down. So you want to be very, very organized when you do things.
Yeah.
You also want to, and these are just simple things, you want to pay attention to your timing of things, so that if you are literally timing what's going on. So for example, we use breakout rooms a lot in our program because it's highly interactive, but you have to give students sort of, in this time I'd like you to do this, and this is the end product, and it's sort of keeping them on track, because you can get off track pretty quickly.
Yeah.
uh, Monitoring chat, for example, depends on the size of your class, but you could have a very big class. Even 30 students can throw things off when you're trying to do something as an instructor and the chat's going by and you're trying to pay attention to two cognitive tasks and you get
Yeah.
lost.
Yeah.
That's really challenging. A simple thing there is asking for a student volunteer to monitor the chat, and that actually
Mm.
can make lecturing work better as well, because the student can say, excuse me, Dr. K, there's a question, and that grabs the audience attention. As soon, we're talking back and forth right now. If I was just doing a solo talk, that's
Yeah.
not going to be as interesting.
True.
So those are sort of my big picture ideas, but there's a lot of things that you need to pay attention to, and sort of this. And I'm not promoting this book; it's free. It's just that
Yeah.
there's there's warm up ideas. There's your overall learning framework. So, for example, we emphasize social presence, interaction among students.
Hmm.
Human beings are social, and if you can maximize that through things like breakout rooms or interesting sorts of chat activities or polling
True.
with Mentimeter or something of that.
Mentimeter is very interactive. Yes.
Right, so that students, they can pay attention. So you
Yeah.
can use Mentimeter and then you can shift back and forth, but that gets the interactive part. But maybe they
Yeah.
can work in teams to actually enter answers or responses. And our success rate for our program is somewhere near, it's close to 97% graduation rate.
Great.
and
Yeah.
we and we emphasize the social presence. So that's a big thing for students. um, we in the book, and I'll just give you a few things, we go off on video creation tips. So creating good videos ahead
Yeah.
of time, if you're doing a flip thing, that's an art. And if you're
Yes.
going
Yeah.
to if you're going to create a 20-minute video, nobody's going to watch that. You have to
Yeah.
chunk that.
Yeah. True.
um, and so there's all kinds of things about pre-course ideas and preparing your students for that, the kind of technology they need, because lots of students don't know this is, or they may not have the technology. That's the other thing that we are running, worldwide.
Yes.
In North America, we assume everybody has access to internet. That's not true. And so then you have to
Hmm.
think about, how do we deal with that?
Yeah.
Um, I bet you've come across some very useful technology tools. So we
Oh,
discussed some.
yes. Yeah. So like I introduced my students to Pedagogy, something
Yes.
that's very
Hmm.
interesting, and it was something new, and the
Yep.
eyebrows raised when I took that word. It took them a time to even
Sure.
understand the word, but it is so nice, in a short 6 minute 40 seconds, how
Yep.
students can present interactive. It is interactive in the way that 20-second slide
Yes.
just gives, it helps them to control their thoughts as well and make them present well. That was something really nice. And also for us as teachers, the
Yep.
online lectures, if it's done through like Pechakucha, it gives you in short 6 minutes 40 seconds, the whole concept can be delivered. And at
Absolutely.
Padlet as well, it gives live interaction on the screen. I've used Poll EV as well. That was something, it makes word clouds for them while they
Yep.
are responding to a
Hmm.
question, how they learned. So the word cloud, so the interaction on online, so they could see the words coming up. Their word cloud
Yeah.
was creating while the responses. So yeah,
Oh,
I don't want to take
great.
your time for your
No,
time, but
no, though
yeah, so
that's valuable for your listeners. And
yeah.
what you're saying there is find and develop your toolkit of
Mm.
interactive activities. You've mentioned 4 or 5 there. You could have a list of at least 15 of just different kinds
More
of
than, yes, yeah,
activities.
yeah. I'm
And
just,
and
highlighting the few that were very
yeah,
successfully perceived by my students.
so my
Yeah.
recommendation is
Yes.
have your toolkit for interactivity to create your chunks. So it's
Yeah.
okay, we're going to talk about this. Okay,
Yeah.
now let's do some interaction with this. Let's work with the information that I presented. That's just good learning. Um,
True.
and,
So,
and
and
then the
also
last, go ahead.
it might not work for a set of group
Oh,
of students, but it might work better for the next one. So it is, you don't demotivate yourself or start from square one. You can keep on experimenting and tweaking
oh,
around, isn't it? Yeah.
good teachers. I think it's a craft, right? We're just trying to get better.
True.
We try some new things out. So I mean that's good advice too. Understand that things may not work. One thing that I actually suggest, highly recommend, is get, especially when you're new, is get feedback from your students on a regular basis while the course, and anonymous feedback.
Yeah, true.
Um, that I can tell you that just changes things, because sometimes we think we're being clear. We think we've Nobody designs a class to fail. We
Yeah,
think it should work, but we want to get it's our students that are sort of understanding, does that work for them? Um,
exactly.
I'll,
Yeah.
I'll give
Because
you,
nobody can teach you a formula of a successful lesson, right? So it is
right.
like, it's just play through your experience, through your mistakes, you keep on revising, going back and forth, and
Yeah.
try to
And
come up in somewhere in between. And feedback, obviously, from students is a big help.
it's a huge help because it keeps
Yeah,
that loop going, particularly, I don't know about you, but many of us probably felt like we were beginner teachers again.
yeah,
We have 20 years experience teaching. That's when I first did the online program. I resisted 12 years ago as well. I thought, I don't know if it's going to work.
yeah.
But I really organized myself, and I got feedback from the students, and
Hmm.
I developed my craft just as you would when you're starting out in teaching. You're trying to, so, but that's stressful. Going back to those first years, that was a lot of work, right? And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's what people experience. I don't know what you experienced in your area, but we were going back and forth. You're in
It
class,
happens,
and
yeah, in
then
the
you
beginning,
were.
just going back and forth, and especially the
That's
cultural
hard.
issues here, not opening the cameras were not mandatory because of the cultural
Yeah,
aspect of this part of the world. So this
sure.
online pedagogy is, especially post-pandemic, there were lots of these issues as well when, you
Yeah,
know, it was not mandatory to open their videos. So that's
yeah.
also a drawback as well, I guess. There's not
Well,
always a plus side to everything.
oh no, but that's the same in person. Because, for example, in showing cameras, we have similar challenges. We don't want
Mhm.
to make things mandatory, but we want students to want to do it, and they will do it when you put them into breakout groups, because
Yeah,
it just feels awkward being with 3 people or 4 people,
yeah,
and not putting cameras on. It seems sort of strange.
true.
And so you can encourage that. I joke with students, if you show your face, you'll be one of the few, and I'll know who you are, and that's good because you'll get a reference, and it's a personal connection, and you want your instructors to. So you try to talk to them about that. That's about developing your e-culture, and
True.
however, those online breakout rooms work really well because
They did,
students
yeah.
can stay focused in a class, a large class. If you have people break into rooms that, groups, right? There's a
Yes.
lot of noise.
Yes, there
Yeah,
is. Yeah. And we can as well go into those rooms and see what they're
yeah,
doing, have a discussion with them and come back to different rooms.
absolutely.
Yeah. So this,
I mean, you can rotate around a class, but
yes,
it's not
yeah,
quite the same. You're
yes,
you're almost in this vacuum sealed room where people can focus.
yeah,
And so yeah, there are some pretty interesting things that you can do, but there's there, as you say, there's challenges with everything, and it's sort of how to do it well, not so much that something's like online's bad or that classroom. Well, I don't think people would say classroom is bad, but that it doesn't work. I think we both can find situations where face to face in a classroom doesn't work well, but that's because the teacher is struggling with good
true.
strategies.
Yeah.
And that's the same with online. Unfortunately, we've been forced in an online situation where there was no training. It was like, go. And that that's hard. That's hard for anyone.
Great. Yes, I'm sure. I couldn't agree more with it, Dr. Kay. So do you think that educational institutions need to consolidate their edtech and training for the teachers, especially?
Hmm. Well, I think in terms of you're talking about training and in what way do you mean consolidate? Like just
Like even enhancing the edtech tools in the institution
yeah.
itself, in
Oh,
the
yeah,
institution, plus providing that training to the teachers
yeah.
to enhance their teaching learning experience.
So yeah, I have two answers to that. Yes, absolutely. With the ed tech, there has to be lots of exploration. There has to be that toolkit available to the teachers. And then, of course, the tools sit there unless you provide some support.
Yeah,
You can provide training, right? But the old PD model of training is starting to wear thin, and we've all been to it where we've been to something, we get excited about it, but we're not going to use it right then. And then by the time we use it, we forget, we're not sure how to use it again, So
yeah,
we talk about just in time. Say you're using Mentimeter, we could do a workshop. Here's how you use it. People get excited, uh,
yeah,
but their course starts in a month. By the time they get to the month, the training's not there anymore,
yeah.
and they're figuring. So what they need is just in time training, and we have that available on the web. What
Mhm.
you need is your support team, your teaching and learning center, whatever it is, to have those videos, short videos, accessible. Um,
True.
and so people need some guidance on how to use the tool, right? So that's the
Yes.
one thing for sure,
Yeah.
technically how to use it. And what they need also, and this is where it's critical, is some pedagogical ideas about the possibilities for using the tool.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
mentioned, a different style of presenting. Someone might not think about that, and then
True.
you can and think about it. You explained it to me in 30 seconds. Well, they did this and did that, and this was that, and
Yeah.
we're gay. I bet if he gave you a minute, you could sell us on the idea that somebody would say, right? So some short videos on pedagogy, surely they're available. We don't focus on that. We often look at like, how do you use a tool? Most
True.
tools are pretty straightforward to use. And if they're
Yes.
not, uh, teachers tend to shy away from it because I don't want to spend 3 hours using the tool. I actually want to
Yeah.
focus on my learning outcomes. So
True.
I think a different kind of training is going to be needed,
Yeah, and
but
even
it's
so I think this is where online platforms have come into existence since post-pandemic, and when we're recording the sessions during the training, so it
mhm,
when the links are shared, that the fact, I think it's more about they even shared, it's more about intrinsically motivating yourself to learn
yes.
something,
Yeah,
Somebody can't just walk your finger, hold your finger and walk you across the road unless you as teachers are ready to come out your comfort zone and think outside the
absolutely.
box and try to, improve the experience there.
I agree. That is, I think you're spot on there. And teachers, what student ever asked for a workshop to learn about a tool? Very rare.
Yeah,
Students just go online, they go to YouTube, they
yeah,
ask their friends, and they learn the tool.
yeah,
Uh, Teachers need to be that nimble as well.
true.
And that does require some motivation. And I think what's happened, though, as I mentioned, this sort of paradigm shift is that
Mhm.
everybody now has used technology in some way that they, even the strong Luddites, the people that have resisted, they've had to use it.
True.
And therefore, uh, uh, the resistance, even for online learning, of course, there was resistance. And now we have people saying, oh, that actually could work.
Yeah.
And
And they
that
don't
could
want to
work.
go back to face now. They've
Well,
might
some
be
don't.
teaching in their pajamas at
Yeah,
home.
well, there you go. Well, there is, think about it, the time that, commuting time and things like
Yeah,
that, where,
yeah,
and sometimes meetings I do anyway, I have
yeah,
way too many meetings because we don't have any travel time, so you
yeah,
can get exhausted. But
yeah.
we've definitely had learning, teaching and learning disrupted in a significant way.
True.
So we can't go back as business as usual.
Yeah,
My one of my bigger concerns is countries where, or areas where technology is not available, and there isn't the infrastructure. That's a problem. That almost seems to be something that should be uh, a necessity, even if funded in some way by
mm,
maybe countries that can't afford it, or areas that can't afford it, because I think we all know this isn't our last pandemic.
yes,
I wish I could say it was, but it just doesn't seem like that's. And so we're going to have to be nimble. And we've had the warning now.
yeah,
So, but think of places where there's not readily available technology. That's challenging.
true,
What do you do there? So
true.
yeah.
So for me, I think it was about time. And sadly, it took us a pandemic to recognize the fact that the
Hmm.
education system needed a transformation and adaptation, because we are teaching 21st century tech savvy generation now. And
Yep.
you keep on bringing this question up: oh, they are sleeping in the class, they're demotivated, or I tried my best, I did use Kahoot, I did use Quizlet, but they're still not responsive. So did we ever think that we had to really transform our own teaching style as well? Because
Exactly.
this is a different generation, and it is totally different now. What do you think? Just your final comment on this, Dr. Kay?
Oh, I again, I agree with you. I think, and that's actually what we do with our programs, and they make them far more interesting. All of our programs are focused on um, an inquiry or problem-based approach where
Mhm.
students are working collaboratively and having to work problems out. There isn't
Yeah,
a cookie cutter. We actually don't have exams, and that's
yeah,
shocking for some people. We have authentic, we call them non-disposable assignments, where they actually have some impact in the world, where they're doing
great.
blog posts or
Yeah,
videos or whatever. And so that's really, really important, because that's the world we're in, where you're going to
true.
have to
Yeah,
learn how to solve problems and be engaged. And
yeah,
students will be, if you set up the situation like you're saying. It's not just putting a token effort of technology. Technology will help them
yeah,
be good problem solvers. That's what we really, our students, what we're teaching them now is going to be out of date. Um, and so they need to know how to learn for themselves, how to adapt, just like our educators now. Many have
true.
sort of like, well, what do I do because we're online? Well, if you'd grown up in a problem solving world, you would have quickly, I mean, I bet you adapted quite, not
Yeah,
quickly,
yeah.
but you asked people, you formed groups. So what do you do? What did you do? You probably went to online
I think for me, it was
conferences.
more of a intrinsic motivation. I myself, is motivated and attracted towards when I was even teaching face to face, I was also one of, that's why my
Mhm.
platform came into being. So
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
myself was so much enthusiastically engaged in these in edtech tools and how to incorporate that in my classroom that
Yeah.
it was like the magic for me. I'm like, wow, finally I got a
Yeah.
platform where I can showcase my skills more than what I knew. So yeah, it
Yeah.
was for me, it was like perfect. It was like a perfect dream come true. But for some, it was really like, oh my God, why? Why did this happen?
For
So
many. And
yeah,
that's why
yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's been a disruptive thing where people have had
It
to
was,
think,
yes,
they've been
yeah.
forced to think differently.
It was
And
stressful. They
hopefully,
had to leave their
yeah,
jobs. I know some of teachers who had
yeah.
left their teaching
Hmm.
and gone back to a different career paths because of this stress they went
Yeah.
through. Yeah, so
Well, it is, a challenging time. I think I'm trying to be optimistic. I think that I hope, and I do see evidence of people changing their mindsets about learning.
yeah,
And because they've really had to work much harder. Uh,
true.
Even like, I know, I can tell you're very involved and engaged and have, intrinsically love teaching. And there's a number of people. I don't worry about those people. They'll find a way. It's actually the majority that are like, I'm not, they're doing sort of conventional present and test approaches.
Yeah,
They've had to change because that won't work online.
true.
And hopefully that translates when they go back in the classroom. They
Yeah.
actually think about that a little. Um,
So
that's
they
my
had,
hope.
even the assessment was redefined in that way. So
Sure
the
was.
traditional testing and traditional exam-based approach had to change because of all this. So I'm glad that pandemic came in a way for the
Well,
education sake.
for education and technology, there's definitely a huge boost, and it does force us to rethink even things that people never thought about. Like, how do you test if you don't do an exam? Well,
Yeah,
there's lots of authentic ways that you can assess,
true.
and
Yes.
something radical that we could talk about later. But I think we're doing some things where we're doing self-assessment or
Yeah,
gradeless classrooms, and we're focusing on learning as opposed to grades, because grades can really throw people off,
true.
and almost demotivates them. They're motivated extrinsically to get a grade. They're not particularly motivated with the learning, and we're trying to shift that. So that's a shift too, that we're working, where students take responsibility, or more responsibility, for their own assessment. There are peer assessment tools like Critic, for example,
Yeah.
that can work really, really well. And
Yes,
as you say, we rethink assessment and say, because assessment is pretty critical. you know.
it is.
uh,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah. So
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Kay. We have come to the end of this podcast at this point. We would like to thank you again and taking time and sharing your insight about online teaching. And we are honored to have you.
you're very welcome, and thank you for inviting me.
It's our pleasure.